Hey there, MrQuora here. Welcome to another episode of Did You Always Wanted to Know? In today's video we will get to know about examples of a simple flaw in a perfect crime. Sounds interesting, isn't it? So why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, to encourage me to keep bringing such interesting videos for you. By the way, if you are new to this channel, please click that subscribe button, and do not forget to also click that bell icon as well, to get notifications of all our upcoming videos. Oh, by the way, if you subscribe to this channel and write subscribed in the comments below, I will give you a shout out in one of my next videos. Now it is time to get started then. Story number 1. Mike Williams was fond of duck hunting. On December 16, 2000, which happened to be his 6th wedding anniversary, he went out to pursue his hobby. Promised his wife he'd be back in time for the celebration, but he never returned. Search and rescue team found his boat and shotgun the next day, but he was nowhere to be seen. Initial reactions were that he may have drowned, but his body could not be found. Since the lake inhabited alligators, the blame was on cold-blooded animals. It was assumed that he fell off his boat and was eaten by the gators. Mike remained on the missing list though. 6 months later his waders, torch, hunting license and safety jacket were found floating in the lake. On his wife Denise's request, he was declared dead by accidental drowning. She married another man, Brian Winchester, in December 2005. He was Mike's high school friend and an insurance agent. Thousands of letters from Mike's mom to the authorities, and the case was reopened. She just didn't feel her son had disappeared and was eaten by the gators. By then, it was clear to the investigators that alligators don't eat humans as a whole, and they don't even eat during winters. So, this pointed towards some serious foul play. There was no evidence to arrest anyone, however. 16 years of no evidence, then the police arrested Brian Winchester in August 2016 for allegedly kidnapping Denise. He did so because she wanted to divorce him. On Denise's request, the judge agreed to turn down Winchester's bail application. She said he would kill her and her daughter. On December 19, 2017, Winchester was sentenced to 20 years in prison for armed kidnapping of Denise. The very next day, on December 20, Mike's remains were found. In May 2018, Denise Williams got arrested under the charge of first-degree murder. 3 months later, in August, she was charged with insurance fraud worth $1.75 million. The matter got into the trial phase, and Winchester testified against Denise for plotting the murder. He told the court he pushed Mike into the water to make it look like an accident, but it didn't work. So, he shot him in the head and buried his body in the mud near Carr Lake. Denise, in February 2019, was sentenced to life imprisonment for first-degree murder and an additional 30 years for conspiring the crime. There is no possibility of parole. Winchester, though the killer, remained immune from murder conviction because he testified against Denise. The only flaw in this crime was planting the evidence 6 months later. All of that was intact. No signs of gator's tooth or blood on any of the recovered items. The torch worked absolutely fine. And then asking to declare him dead within 6 months of his disappearance. Usually, it takes 5 years to get it done. It took about 2,600 letters to the authorities from a loving mother to find the killers of her son after more than 18 years of his disappearance. Story number 2. Ted Kaczynski. He's infamously known as the Unabomber. He led the longest and most expensive investigation in the history of the Federal Bureau. By all metric possible, he was nothing short of a genius. He earned his bachelor's degree in mathematics from Harvard. In 1962, he enrolled at the University of Michigan, where he earned a master's and doctoral degree in mathematics in 1964 and 1967. Maxwell Reed, a member of his dissertation committee, concluded that maybe 10 or 12 people in the country understood Kaczynski's dissertation. Alan Shields, Kaczynski's doctoral advisor, called Kaczynski's work the best he has ever directed. He was the youngest assistant professor of mathematics to ever teach in the history of University of California, Berkeley. And then, on June 30, 1969, Ted resigned. Following his resignation, he built a remote cabin outside Lincoln, Montana. He figured he could live a simple life with very little money and no electricity or running water. By 1978, he felt that it was not enough to isolate himself from society and nature. Self-sufficiency was not enough. He felt that technology was destroying the only thing he loved, nature. He began building bombs. Here is a table of all the bombs the FBI believes he sent. He killed 3 people and injured 23 others. Here is where he made things really hard. These bombs were either hand-delivered or mailed. As time went on, the bombs got more sophisticated. Sometimes, Kaczynski placed strange initials on them or fingerprints that weren't his. His first series of bombs included one placed in the cargo hold of an American Airlines flight. It was faulty, and didn't detonate. It released smoke and prompted an emergency landing. Had the bomb gone off, it would have obliterated the plane, as determined by its potential explosive power. Kaczynski left false clues all around each bomb he sent. Metal plates with initials on them. Sometimes there would be little notes in bombs that failed to detonate. He used awkward $1 stamps to send the boxes. One of his bombs was in a Sloan Wilson novel. Branches and wood pieces in other boxes. The lack of a clear pattern and targeting virtually randomly rendered him virtually impossible to detect. He took extreme care to never leave fingerprints. When the FBI did find fingerprints of some of his later devices, they were not matched to Kaczynski. There was literally nothing, even nearly 20 years after Ted started. That is, until his brother's wife insisted that he look further into Ted's whereabouts. In 1978, Ted was working at his brother and dad's foam rubber factory. His brother fired him for writing insulting notes to a female supervisor he wanted to date. In 1995, Ted mailed letters to media outlets demanding that they publish his 35,000-word essay titled Industrial Society and Its Future. This was later dubbed the Unabomber Manifesto by the FBI. When his brother, David, read the manifesto, he noticed the writing style. When he looked through old family papers, he found letters Ted had sent to newspapers protesting the impact of technology on nature and humanity. At that point, his brother hired a private investigator and a lawyer to gather details to eventually send to the FBI. The FBI had $1 million reward for any information that would lead to the identification of the Unabomber. The problem with this is that many letters claimed to be this person, and the FBI was filled with thousands of false leads and suspects to review. After 20 years, the only flaw in Ted's plan was that he tried to communicate to the media outlets and that he had a brother following the gross details of the terrorism he was causing across the country. Otherwise, nobody ever really knew him personally. The FBI, before David's involvement, was convinced that Kaczynski was from the Chicago area, had some connection to Salt Lake City, and in the 1990s had some connection to the San Francisco area. In other words, they had nothing. Nearly 20 years later, it was his brother who identified him, who gave the FBI critical information on where he was living in the backcountry of Montana. I don't think a single human being could justify what Ted Kaczynski did. It's nothing less than disgusting and inhumane. Nothing short of domestic terrorism. But had he been born a single child, the FBI would have virtually nothing to provide them, even the semblance of a lead. Story number 3. Donnie Rudd was 31 when he met Noreen Kumeda, only 19, in Barrington, Illinois. After a shockingly brief courtship, they were married in August of 1973, Donnie's second of 5 marriages. Donnie was a young lawyer suffering from financial difficulties who had recently been injured in a car accident. Things weren't going well for him. Perhaps the car accident gave him a villainous idea. Not long after their wedding, tragedy would strike on September 14, 1973, when the newlywed couple was allegedly run off the road in their Ford Pinto by another motorist in the village of Barrington Hills, Illinois. Police arrived to find Donnie despondently holding his wife in the car. The impact of the vehicular crash had allegedly ejected Noreen, thrown her head into a rock, and killed her instantly. Donnie states that he carried her body back to the vehicle where he was holding her when police approached the car. Donnie was unscathed by the accident. There were no witnesses. An emergency room doctor concluded Noreen died from injuries consistent with a car accident, and that no autopsy would be necessary. Donnie inherited $120,000 in life insurance. Was it an accident, or had Donnie committed a flawless crime? The thing is, you don't get away with a crime for just a few days. You have to get away with it for the rest of your life without slipping up. 2 decades later, during his career as a lawyer, Donnie took on a client named Loretta Tabak-Botke, whom he represented in a lawsuit. His one flaw? He bragged that he had won her court case. But he hadn't. Thus, he was never able to give her the monetary settlement because there was no settlement. Loretta was angry over this malpractice, so she reported him to an attorney disciplinary agency. He was eventually disbarred. Loretta was found dead on April 4, 1991, at her home at 1627 North Belmont Avenue in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Loretta must have known her killer because she let them into the house. Had Donnie killed again? There was no evidence left behind. But things began to change for Donnie after that. Maybe he killed Loretta, maybe he didn't. But that wasn't the flaw. Had he been an ethical lawyer, he would have never angered Loretta. Had he not evoked her ire, she wouldn't have reported him. Had he not been reported by Loretta, his name wouldn't have been on the police's short list of people who had a motive to kill her. Donnie would never have been a suspect in his client's death had they not had such a contentious relationship. But Donnie, now 48, immediately became the prime suspect. Since police were almost convinced he was capable of Loretta's murder, they took a closer look at the old 1973 death of his deceased wife Maureen Kumeda. He was probably capable of killing her too. That led to the exhumation of her body in 2013, when experts discovered that her injuries were consistent with repeated blows to the head, not a car accident. It was clear that Donnie had committed murder, alone on that highway with his young wife and no witnesses. Prosecutors even theorized that Donnie actually wooed and very abruptly married the teenage girl with the single intention of killing her for the life insurance money. On September 13, 2018, a 76-year-old Donnie Rudd was sentenced to 75 to 150 years in prison after a first-degree murder conviction. He had gotten away with a homicide for 45 years. But one unrelated, unethical act as a lawyer that produced a disgruntled client unraveled the entire thing. His nearly half-a-century cover-up was exposed. It's almost an injustice that he'll be eligible for parole in 2029. But it's probably justice that he has colon cancer and has decided not to receive treatment. He won't survive prison. Donnie Rudd was most likely responsible for the 1991 death of Loretta Tabak Botke as well, but the investigation is still ongoing. So those were their near-perfect crime stories with a single flaw which led to the downfall of the perpetrator. Interesting, weren't they? Well, that's all for today's video. If you liked today's video then please like and share this video. Also if you are new to this channel, then please consider subscribing to watch similar videos in future. Thanks for watching today. So until my next video, take care, stay safe and goodbye.